Hello, everyone, and welcome to another conversation on Let's Talk Leadership. Yesterday afternoon, we were talking about the coaching support we provide to young leaders with Mara Garofalo and Judith Taranya. And today, we're joined by Jane Miller and by Jackie Craig, who are two more of our wonderful volunteers. And we're going to be exploring the same sort of topic, what it's like as a coach. What the experience is like for a coach to coach a young leader. In this case, we're talking about in one person based in North America, another based in India. So possibly quite a difference in experience and in terms of where they've come from in their development as a leader. But we'll explore that a bit more. So if you're listening live, and quite a few people were yesterday, do join us, do add some information to the chat, ask us questions, and we'll do our best to respond. And if you're listening to this at a later date and you think, gosh, this sounds like something I'd like to get involved with, either as a coach or as a young leader, then please do get in touch. And we'd be delighted to hear from you. So Jane, Jackie, lovely to see you both this morning. And looking sort of ready for what we're going to discuss, which is great. So I'm going to ask, first of all, you've both been coaching. I mean, Jane, you started coaching, I think, one of the very first young leaders that we supported, Asta Singh in India. Jackie, you're coaching Ashlyn over in Canada, I think, at the moment. I just wanted to sort of, first of all, get your experiences of what it's been like as a coach to work with young people, particularly these two young leaders. What have you noticed? How have you felt? What have been some of the things that you've perhaps had to rethink, given that you're both highly experienced coaches? So there's a tough.
Who's going first? Do you want to dive in, Jane, or shall I dive in?
Well, you look ready to dive in, Jackie.
Okay. So, I mean, what can I say? It's a delight because, of course, we're working with this young talent at a time that leaves me speechless in terms of the incredible change in the world. And the topic, we're working on these topics that are global topics. They're topics that are so meaningful and so important. So it's that I'm just so impressed, first off, by the passion for their topic and the passion for change and the passion to make a difference. And then also the considerable difficulties, because this is virtual and the need for exquisite communication is such a challenge. So first and foremost, what I've noticed for me is it's inspiring. It's inspiring to know that there are this young talent making such a difference in the world.
Yeah. And Jane, how about your experience?
I think the word inspiring resounds very much with me too, Jackie, because what struck me is that I was kind of in awe of what Asta was doing with so few resources, really, and with so little experience herself, not having come through a sophisticated management training route in any way, just out there in the field, trying to lead with the minimum of resources, and in, as you say, in the pandemic, but none of this sort of laptops and things at the other end, just with people working agriculturally in the field with maybe women with just a telephone, and nevertheless managing to mobilize the people she was leading and design exciting ways of communicating with them. And I was just in awe of the kind of the size of the task, the enthusiasm, and the appetite for learning, really. Anything I could help her with, but I've never encountered quite such a sort of challenging situation, and somebody with such determination and enthusiasm in those circumstances.
Wonderful.
Yeah. We touched on yesterday, almost sort of by the way, that the word bravery in a lot of what what we're experiencing, in bravery, either in terms of just saying yes to some coaching support without actually knowing who Jane Miller or Jackie Craig is. Just, they're prepared to do that. So that in itself, I think, is a step. And then sometimes some of the things they're actually involved in. I mean, Jane, you mentioned the numbers of people that Asta and her colleagues are involved with. When I first heard about it, just blew my mind away. I thought, I just don't even know. I don't know many corporate people who'd be able to deal with that scale of work. And Jackie in Canada, trying to do the sort of things, the coordinating work that goes on. Again, it's a real challenge, I would have thought. And yet everyone, we've had one or two young leaders that haven't worked out quite so well, but nearly all of them have stepped into the fray in their own worlds and just got on with stuff at a very early age. And as you say, Jane, with almost no resources whatsoever, not necessarily no sort of line management, no funding. They've just got on and done it. And it's really remarkable.
Really driven by this passion to change. And I just, for me, I just find that what I get from that is I feel invigorated once again, to think that, well, yeah, we will, we're going to see some change because there's all this young energy and bravery and courage. So, the question originally, I think, as you said, what are we getting from this? And for me, it's exactly that, hope.
And has it changed in any way the way you might approach, say, working with what I rather awfully said, the sort of boring middle age group sort of business executive? And got slapped down quite firmly by Jude. But has it changed anything at all in the way you might approach work with, say, more of your mainstream clients?
I hadn't really thought about that. I wonder if perhaps I might notice myself, and I need to think about it, becoming a little irritated by some of the imbalance. I mean, as Jane, as you said, we're dealing with leaders where there's not a lot of budget. There's a lot of challenges. They haven't had any support in terms of development. So I hadn't thought about it, but maybe sometimes, that just it seems to be the unfairness of that. And I suppose then an irritation, so sometimes to want to say, come on, you've got everything, you've got such support, let's make a difference. Perhaps I need to think about that.
Yeah. Any reflections, Jane?
I don't think it's really changed anything in the way that I regard other coaches, but I think it made me reflect on something else. I think it made me reflect on that it doesn't have to be complicated, that actually coaching at its heart is really simple, and that you can sometimes do a lot for people through something really simple. So maybe that's something that I'll remember, that applies to everything. That I was sort of really surprised that Asta was so grateful for what for me was really some simple coaching conversations. And I think I underestimated how a simple coaching conversation can really help people, and how easy it would be to give more of that if one could just find the people who would find it useful. And it took us a while really to kind of get there, because at the beginning, and this is true of course of all coaching, there was a whole contracting piece. And at the beginning, I think Asta thought it was more like lessons. She was going to have some lessons from me, and although we tried to position it at the beginning with the organization. And I think it took a while to realize for her that she had the answers and that I was going to just help her get there, that she had lots of great ideas, and that it was the reassurance really that a coaching conversation can give, that actually it's just a question of releasing the potential, helping release that potential. And so I was struck by, in a way, kind of less is more. Maybe that's something that I'll take into all my work.
Jane, did you, you've made me think there about the pace, so and assumptions. So as we enter into the very initial stages of coaching, the expectations that a coachee might have versus our expectations. I mean, was that something? So your contracting, did that take longer, do you think, with the younger leaders?
I think it took longer than I expected. And once we found each other in the sense of what the dynamics of the relationship was, then it was very powerful very quickly. But I think I underestimated. Maybe it's also, it's virtual. It's two different worlds.
Yeah.
It's my lack of knowledge of her world, and all that. It's just as much a question of me adapting to her as her adapting to me. And I definitely think I learned an awful lot about her world and what the leadership task was, and I was very excited to be able to help her think of ways of, imaginative ways for leading in the circumstances that she had, and encouraging her just to go for it. But I learned so much myself from working with her. It is. I would like to say that this kind of work is a real. I realized at the end I was giving more than I thought I could, but I was absolutely at the same time realizing, gosh, I've got so much to learn myself.
Yeah.
And what's for me has been wonderful about that particular relationship, Jane, is that I've had confirmation from Asta's senior colleagues saying how different she is. The difference they've noticed in her confidence, for instance, and in the way she is able to sort of speak up and share her ideas and deliver, and that confidence building, and it comes up time and time again with some of the other young leaders, has been incredibly impactful. That simple opportunity to support someone's development in that way has had a really powerful impact on not just on her, but on the organization that she works with, the immediate organization. And we've had the same comments from one or two of our young leaders in Africa. You just get a sense that they needed someone who was, if you like, on their side a bit, or was giving them something, helping them, supporting them, without asking for anything back. And that all they could do was just literally open themselves up and be prepared, be brave, be prepared to see where it took them. And we've had some really, yes, we've had one or two failures, but we've had some wonderful examples where people have come back and said, I didn't know what I was getting into. I still don't even know I know much about it, but it's just so nice to be able to work with someone who genuinely cares about my development, which is an incredibly powerful message. So this sort of simple is more piece, I'd just like to explore, because what have you noticed in both of your experiences, again, without breaking confidence, have been the sorts of issues that these young leaders are having to deal with? Is there any commonality between what a young leader in Canada faces and what a young leader in India faces?
Well, for me, communication. I think, the theme of, and that sounds simple, and yet we know that's so challenging. And young leaders having to connect with stakeholders globally, working on amazing opportunities, but also very challenging circumstances, being able to have a mindset to think about, because it seems so complex. And I think, Jane, your point around, let's simplify this. And so communication, connecting with stakeholders and building relationships of trust with stakeholders to be able to make a difference as the key themes I've noticed.
Yeah.
And the simplicity, but actually it's not that simple, is it? The complexity of that.
Yeah. I think communication would be is absolutely it's the issue. It's a core issue for young leaders everywhere, of course, and it comes in different forms, but it's about speaking up. It's will my voice be heard? There are different ways this manifests itself, but it's that, isn't it? I'm young, I'm inexperienced, I may not be fluent in the target language. How can I feel confident? How can I be sure that I will be listened to? Not so much necessarily for the people they're leading, but for their, as you say, for their stakeholders, for the people who are senior to them in the organization. That's definitely a key one. And I think you're absolutely right, Matthew. It's what we can perhaps do is just help them build that confidence, sometimes just by kind of challenging limiting beliefs.
Yes.
I was just about to say that whole mindset, and we see it time and time again around, expert. How can I be a leader if I'm not the expert in the topic? And it's helping or shifting that mindset into self-belief. Yeah.
I haven't been to business school. I haven't done this sort of management training or leadership training. It's which was part of the sort of process of contracting that I was talking about. But believing that actually they had it in them naturally to lead, and that perhaps some more senior experienced corporate leaders could look at them and learn so much about the freshness of their approach.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to explore with you, but tell me if I'm treading on dangerous ground. I've been lucky enough to meet virtually all of the young leaders. And many of them, both male and female, have a sort of an underlying theme to the work they do, which is about improving the position of women in society, particularly young women. And some of them are dealing with violence. Some of them are dealing also with educating young women about their own health and their own sexual health. Some of them are dealing with the education of, particularly in India, the education of young women from poor communities. And some are also having to work, and I'm thinking of Latin America, having to work in quite a male-dominated environment and try and make changes. I just wondered whether that's something that probably we all come across, but not in quite such a direct way as some of these young people are having to work with. I just wondered whether that was something that you picked up on, the challenges of being not just a young woman, but maybe a young man, but trying to improve the world that the women live in and that their families live in. And, I mentioned yesterday, we have Najib in Afghanistan who works for Save the Children. He's got a young family of all girls. He's working in Afghanistan. He's the education coordinator for Save the Children. And yet in a situation where, his own family are immediately impacted by at the moment, the lack of education. that's available. Is that something that has come up in your conversations? Again, is it, that in different places, in different parts of the world, there are these underlying themes that our young leaders are having to deal with?
Well, I think definitely, not just through my work with Let's Talk Leadership. I've come across it in other contexts too. But for the work with Let's Talk Leadership, what strikes me is that Asta was such a great role model for the women she was dealing with, and the role modeling, she was very aware of, the situation of the women that she was leading, but I would say that she was a role model for them in the sense of showing what somebody can achieve, what a young woman like her can achieve, and giving real inspiration. I have worked with in other contexts with and I've encountered the sort of thing that you were talking about just now, Matthew. And I think there are a lot of young women leaders out there who specifically would like to address helping other young women and girls. And I think there's a lot more we can probably do. That's something that there's a huge appetite for, I think.
Yeah, I mean, admittedly, I'm referencing in the main the young leaders we're supporting in Africa, but nearly all of them, male and female, are involved in some way in trying to gently change society's views of the traditional views of women and their roles, and more specifically looking after women's health issues in a very direct, fundamental way.
Exactly. And I've coached young leaders doing exactly that, and I've been struck too by the way that they use technology, for example, to reach their target audience, and that it's all done very often through the phone, through apps and things like that, and that's how they connect, and that's how they lead, again, it's very fresh, and it's very new. And if they want to impact and make that change, they have to do it in ways that their target audience will respond to. So again, lots of learning for other generations, I think, from how they're doing it. And what you're doing, of course, is you can't teach them anything about that. They're teaching us, but you're kind of you're building the confidence, helping build the confidence that enables them to do more of the same.
Yeah.
I was, as you were talking about that, I was thinking most certainly the whole subject of diversity, both from female leadership point of view and also from race and gender, religion. A big part of what we have been talking about, and as you say, Jane, the different ways so we've recognized communication and the different ways that this generation communicate, and it made me think how I remember when I was a younger leader, and I was as angry and frustrated, particularly about the female leadership, and I was very much from a place of, well, it's wrong and it shouldn't be. And of course, we learn that, yes, well, it might be wrong and it shouldn't be, but it is. And so how do we change that? And I think that comes back to this communication, particularly, so stakeholders, diversity, communication. How can I, passionately change this, because it shouldn't be? Is this influencing without the authority? Being able to understand how to maneuver through difficulties and conversations and empathy and all of those good things that we know are so important to be able to get an outcome, to be able to change something, as opposed to trying to crash it through and say, well, it's wrong. And that's been, I think, if I think of our conversations in coaching, that's been a underpinning message and opportunity.
And how many conversations have you had with Aslin, Matthew?
At this stage, I think seven.
Gosh, yeah.
Yeah, we're meeting again next week.
Brilliant. Well, give her my best wishes when you speak to her. But I'm going to try and get some of them on calls like this, just to sort of talk about their experience of working with us. But I suppose one of the other things that has come up is that I've recognised as a common denominator with nearly everyone is that most of them are doing it against the odds. That we talked about not having much to start with. Some of them have had nothing to start with, but they've been driven to actually move from, yes, maybe frustration or it ain't right, it shouldn't be like this, into actually doing something. And in most cases, and it may just be the young leaders that we've attracted, doing it in extraordinary circumstances in some cases. Either trying to make changes. We were talking about Medi in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where literally 50 kilometers down the road there's a war going on. We've got a young man that's running a sort of innovation hub in the middle of a South African township, and the issues surrounding that, and they just get on and do it. And they manage to find some funding, or they manage to find some support from somewhere. The three people that we're supporting in Somalia, one of the poorest countries in the world, terrible poverty, all sorts of instability, just getting on with it and doing it. I mentioned Esma yesterday in Georgia, doing extraordinary stuff in very difficult surroundings, which sometimes when I then meet the sort of senior executive teams that I spend my time with, you think, it may be tough trying to get the cash to balance, or trying to find out, what the strategic plan should be over the next 5 years. But you're not doing it against a war that's raging just in the car park, or, people literally trying to close you down every 5 minutes because they disagree with what you're doing. And I just wonder how we sort of capture this gutsiness and help to sort of maybe use it for the wider good in some way.
Yeah.
Because they are truly gutsy,
They are.
I mean, all of them. I mean, if you look on our website, and Richard has completely revamped it, and you can see their bios and what they're doing. Whether it's Henina in Madagascar, or Esma in Georgia, or we've got Kieran up in the Isles of Orkney doing great things in his community. They're all very gutsy people, very gutsy.
They're very courageous, and they're working on the edge. And the quick answer to that, Matthew, is I have no idea, but wouldn't it be fantastic to be able to bridge that? Because it's a win-win, right, for all generations, for everybody. Yeah. I'm going to think about that, because I think that would be amazing, and perhaps an injection of passion for some leaders, that have been doing what they do for a long time, and perhaps I remember that book, Sweating the Smaller Stuff. It would be such a nice way if we could bridge and inject passion across, and inject their experience across to the younger generation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Anything else you want to mention, or anything that's come up in your thinking? I mean, just primarily from your perspective, what have you got out of it? Are you glad you said yes when I asked you?
Oh yes.
Right.
Oh yes, for sure.
Absolutely. Sort of, just inspiration, better than any sort of training course that I've been on. I was talking about retraining during the pandemic. This is better because this re-energizes us, I think, as coaches, doesn't it, Jackie?
That's right. You're right, Jane. That's exactly.
Yeah. This re-energizes us. That this gets us thinking in the way that you're thinking now, Matthew, about, and how can we tap into this for some wider good too. So, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to do this and to recommend it to my colleagues as a way of refreshing and revitalizing our practice.
I agree.
Yeah,
certainly.
This literally was an idea that came out had been in gestation for a while, but got kicked, into the forefront of my mind at the beginning of the pandemic, because possibly like you, but certainly with the facilitation I was doing, my work stopped dead in April 2020 or whenever it was. There was not a single piece of work to be done, and the virtual world had not sort of got into gear. And I just sat back and I thought, well, I'm near the end of my career. I really don't want to fizzle out into the sort of long grass and just quietly sort of disappear without at least doing something to have a go at sort of, it sounds a bit grand to say putting something back into the global community, but all of us in different ways have earned a jolly good, had a jolly good career and had a pretty good lifestyle out of the work we do. So it started and it's just grown, and I had no idea at the time that any of this would happen. We've just, with your help, we've just done it organically. And I think when I tot up, I'll have to check the website, but I think we're now up to about 38 young leaders that we've supported. We're supporting about 25 at the moment, and we've got 2 or 3 more to come on stream from Mexico and from the Dominican Republic and Argentina. And it just seems to be great that all of you are prepared to say, yeah, I'll use some of my time and some of my expertise to do this. And we've got young people who we can reach out to using the technology we've now got. So although it might be nice to fly to, Uganda or travel to Mexico or whatever, we can do it virtually and make an impact. And I think it's just wonderful that all of us are connected. I mean, we've got now, I think it's 28 coaches lined up. We've got a few more that want to take part. We've got all these young people that, the opportunities are endless as long as we've got the energy and the will to keep going at it.
Absolutely. Well, yeah. And as Jane said, thank you, because it's energizing.
Well, I shall be on you at some point shortly to say there's another young person that needs our support. But anyway, for the moment, it's been super having a chat to you this morning. Thanks for joining in. Thanks for doing what you do. If you haven't seen the website, we have literally just changed it so that all of the young people are up there now. All of the coaches, the bios are there. Asta's little video clip is on the website, and we'll be further developing it. And for those of you who may have been listening or watching, if you've got any questions or if you want to get involved, just get in touch, and we'll see what we can put you in touch with a young leader. So great. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matthew. Thank you.
Jane.